Go ahead.
Miss Arvizo, I've been asking you about a series of phone calls that.
Turn on the microphone, please.
Miss Arvizo, I've been asking you about a series of telephone calls that you received from Frank, and I asked you, I believe, if anybody else had called you about this same issue. Your answer was what? About this matter of returning back to Neverland.
Yeah, Michael.
And, okay, anybody else beyond that?
Beyond Frank?
Yes.
No.
Did he ever talk about any other matter other than that issue? The danger to the children returning to Neverland?
Yeah.
And the rebuttal?
Yeah. And also, about the media, that they were all bad people. And, they made me believe that. To the audience, I think different of you guys now. That's what they made me believe about you guys. But, you guys are basically good guys, too. You guys are the good side. It's okay.
Miss Arvizo, at some point in time, did you have an opportunity to listen to a tape recording of one of those telephone calls?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Were you aware that one of those telephone calls was actually tape recorded?
No, I wasn't aware.
Do you recall who it was who played that tape recording for you?
The DA's office at the grand jury.
All right. Was it just prior to the grand jury that you heard it for the first time?
It was right prior to the grand jury.
All right. And was it played during the grand jury?
It was played during the grand jury.
And you had an opportunity at that time to listen to that tape recording in its entirety, did you not?
Yes.
All right. Do you remember what specific phone call that was?
It wasn't one specific phone call. It was many conversations, and the masters of choreography blended it all into one tape.
I want you to just answer the question that I ask you, all right? It was more than one telephone call, is that true?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because I'm the one talking.
You simply remember that it was.
That, and also the key things such as, my being at my mom's, being at Jay's, there's a difference. My children all not being there, and then Gavin being there. Just different little clues. Since I was the one talking, I knew. And also, one key thing. The original phone number that Frank had given me was very different than the conversation that ended up being on the tape. And that number was actually towards more over here rather than in the beginning.
I'm not certain I understood that. There were
many conversations blended onto one tape and made as if it was only one conversation. So you're going to hear a series of different conversations all blended into one.
You said there was a phone number that Frank gave you. What did that mean?
That phone number, the 201 number, was not the one that was originally given to you. It was a different number, that's why I know.
201 being the area code?
Yes, sir.
Did you dial that number to talk to Frank?
No, not at that time.
At any time during this period while you were in Los Angeles, before returning to Neverland?
Okay, before returning to Neverland, I'm being generous. Maybe less than 3, less than 5. And I.
Less than 3, less than 5 what?
Of if I ever returned a phone call.
You think you might have returned?
I may.
You might have returned a phone call to him?
Yes.
And perhaps as many as 3 or 5.
And I'm guessing 1.
Do you have?
But, yeah, after.
Do you have a specific recollection of ever returning a phone call to him?
I don't remember. It was, because he was calling so much, there was no need for me to return a phone call.
All right.
At that period.
Was he leaving either voicemail messages or answer phone messages when he called?
At that time, I was picking up the call, and there was also some phone messages.
Can you give us a sense of how many conversations you were actually having with Frank in any given day?
With Frank? Okay, oh, God, no, I can't.
Was the subject of the video, doing the rebuttal, was that something that was frequently discussed in those phone calls?
This is when he was pulling me back in.
Your Honor, we have marked exhibit number 809 as a tape. Actually, it's on the form of a CD that we would like to play at this time. Whereupon, a CD, Plaintiff's Exhibit No. 809, was played for the court and jury. Your Honor, we have a transcript, and we will furnish a copy of that transcript tomorrow morning.
The microphone, sir.
Again.
We have a transcript of that tape as well. We will furnish the court a copy of that transcript as a separate exhibit tomorrow morning.
All right.
Ms. Arvizo, you've now listened to this tape. Is this, in fact, the same tape that you previously listened to?
Yes.
And you have listened to this tape as well during the course of the grand jury hearings?
Yes.
You believe that this is a compilation of a few telephone calls?
Yes.
What were your feelings about Frank at the time of these phone calls? What did you think of him?
Well, I thought he was a good guy. And he ended up being the worst one out of all of them.
At the time of these telephone calls, you had trust in him?
Yes, because he was repeating the same things. Not identical, but he was repeating the same things that Michael had told me in the Miami thing, that we were family. He had said that family never leaves family behind.
Did you believe that to be the case?
I did. I believed him.
Michael Jackson you had only met on one previous occasion?
That's right. But because he was going, I knew violence, and so when he presented to me that there was a violence to my son and my kids, I thought, you know, what a nice guy.
Did you believe Frank with regards to the things that he told you in these telephone calls?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Did you believe Frank's representations to you during the course of these phone calls?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Did you believe that you would be sheltered from the Germans if you returned?
No, I didn't return until he told me that they were fired. I believed everything he said.
What did he tell you specifically about the Germans?
That Michael had them fired. He found out how they were treating the kids and me, so that Michael fired them.
He asked you on a few occasions during these telephone calls if it would be okay to post a 24-hour guard outside your home.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
And I said no.
Did you tell him no repeatedly?
Yes. There was many conversations.
Did you ever have a guard posted outside your house?
Never.
Why did you turn that offer down?
Because I didn't want my parents to know. I had always hidden everything from my parents.
You didn't want your parents to know what?
Because I didn't want them to get scared, because they're older. I've never told my parents about anything. I mean, they barely know now many things.
All right. Now, I think you said that there was never a guard that came. Is that true?
That's right.
When did you decide to return back to Neverland?
When Frank convinced me.
In the tape, he mentions a couple times about doing a video. Is that the rebuttal video that you referred to?
Yes. And every time I said no.
On one occasion in here, you do tell him that you'd be willing to do that, do you not?
Yeah, as long as it's not a script, because the Germans wanted me to say exactly what they dictated.
Were you willing to say something at that time that was positive?
Yes.
About Michael Jackson?
I was.
At that time, did you have anything to say about Michael Jackson that was negative?
No.
Did you tell him you'd be willing to do that?
Yes.
You have references in this interview, or, excuse me, conversation or conversations about Michael Jackson and Frank being family.
Yes.
What was that about?
Because I believed him.
I'm sorry?
I believed him.
And Frank was also making those representations to you?
Yes. I wanted friends so bad.
You wanted friends?
I did.
And why is that?
Because David always told me nobody loved me.
You had talked about David with Frank on these conversations, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell him everything that had happened with regards to?
He already had known. I was just gathering. To the defendant, I was still trying to help you. I was gathering paperwork to prove of David committing these crimes on me and my kids and my animals.
You were gathering up paperwork for what purpose?
To give it to you.
You need to address the question only.
Michael.
Why were you gathering up paperwork for Mr. Jackson?
Because David was interview after interview and after interview, so they could know that he's a liar.
Alright. You need to explain this to me. David is David Arvizo.
Yes.
Your former husband?
Yes.
You say he gave interview after interview after interview?
Yes.
With whom?
With different reporters. This is what Ronald and Dieter had told me.
And somebody had spoken to you about the interviews that David Arvizo is doing?
Ronald and Dieter did at Neverland.
And what did they say to you about those interviews?
That David was talking bad stuff about me and the children.
About you and the children?
Yes.
Alright.
And about Michael.
Did somebody ask you to gather up paperwork about David?
No, I was just trying to help.
And why did you gather up paperwork for them about David?
Just the paperwork, the restraining orders, everything that the court had given me.
What was your purpose for doing that?
Well, so that we can have proof that everything that this man is saying from his mouth is untrue. David.
What time was it during the day or evening that Jesus Solace drove you back to your parents' house?
I don't know. Maybe about 1-something a.m.
It was in the early morning hours?
Yes. About 1:15.
Did you talk with Michael Jackson before being driven back to your parents' house?
No.
During the entire time that you were in Los Angeles, either at your parents' house or at Jay Jackson's residence, were the phone calls continuous during that time?
Yes.
What finally was it that caused you to decide to return to Neverland?
When Frank had said that Michael had fired the Germans.
Was there an understanding about whether or not you would be doing a video once you got back?
No.
You hadn't talked about that?
No. At that point, no. It was just.
What was your belief about whether or not you would be doing a video?
There was none. He had said that I didn't have to do it after all.
Did you express to him some reservations about doing it?
No, I had told him that the Germans wanted to dictate exactly what we wanted to say, so I told him no. And so afterwards, towards the end, Frank had said that I didn't have to do it at all, me and the kids.
Did you go back to Neverland?
Yes, I did.
Do you know approximately what time of the day or evening it was?
The daytime. Gary came for us.
Before going back to Neverland, did you have an interview?
Yes.
With whom?
With Brad Miller.
Did you know who Brad Miller was?
No.
Had you ever seen him before?
No.
Was it prearranged that you would have an interview with him?
Yes.
And who had arranged that?
Frank.
Now, you were still in Los Angeles, is that right?
Yes. In Jay's apartment.
And how long prior to that interview was it that you had arranged it or Frank had arranged it with you?
Hours.
So it was the same day?
Same day.
Did he tell you the purpose for this interview?
Yeah. He had called me in a state of panic, and he was telling me, "Quick, Janet, quick. We need you to talk to Bradley Miller because he's a PI, and he just saw David make contact with the killers. And then he told me about how important it is to say nice things about Michael and that Michael was going to protect me and the kids."
Did you believe it?
I believed it.
Did you feel the kids were in danger at that time?
Yes, I did.
Why did you agree to have an interview with Brad Miller?
Because I believed him.
At which location was this interview?
In Jay's apartment.
And did he arrive by himself, Mr. Miller?
Yes, he did.
Did he identify himself to you?
Yes, he did. Michael's PI.
He told you he was a PI?
Michael's PI.
You've had an opportunity to listen to a tape recording of that interview, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Do you recall at some point during the course of that interview him turning the tape off?
Yes.
Do you know why?
I had walked in for that second, and then I had walked back out right after he had turned it back on, and he said here's that phrase, to say nice things about Michael, because that would appease the killers. That phrase is burned in my brain.
And were you in the room during the entirety of that interview?
No. I kept coming in and out, because Jay in the beginning, he was kind of very now he's softened up. But before, he was very military. Everything was organized. His things were his things. And so I noticed that he was kind of getting a little upset, because he was walking back from the living room where we were at into his bedroom. So I was kind of nervous that he was getting upset, So
you were checking on him periodically?
Yes.
Do you know how long that interview went?
I since have seen the transcript to it, and it shows an ending time, and the ending time is inaccurate. It's incorrect.
What do you think is the length of that interview?
The length of the interview from when he was there it's about an hour, a little over an hour, but the time that it has on the transcript doesn't reflect that.
Did Mr. Miller explain to you why he was there?
Yes. For what Frank had said. The same purpose.
Did he give you any instruction as to what to say before turning on the tape recorder?
Yeah, he fed us. Sometimes we would rewind, stop. And so he was feeding us, but everything I said it with my heart.
All right. And you said nice things about Mr. Jackson, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And did you believe those things at that time?
Yes, I did.
You would have said those things even if he hadn't rewound the tape recorder?
That's right.
Did you then go back to Neverland?
Yes, I did.
Did Mr. Miller talk to you about going back to Neverland?
No, he didn't.
Who was it who made the arrangements for you to return to Neverland?
Frank.
Do you know if that was the next day?
That was the next day.
When you got back to Neverland, what did you see?
And another thing, too, that I seen, which I wasn't that correct on, I noticed that there is. The only way I can know this is because when Chris Carter brought me back, immediately the phone stuff was subpoenaed, so on the day that I used Chris Carter's phone is the day that.
We're jumping ahead of ourselves.
Well, okay, I feel the date may be incorrect also. But the only reason is because I found out afterwards of that phone call.
We're going to get there. You're back in Los Angeles. Who is it who brought you back to Neverland?
Gary Hearn.
Did you go with your children?
Yes, I did.
Do you know what time it is, approximately, that you arrived at Neverland?
I think it was the afternoon.
What did you see when you got there?
Ronald and Dieter.
Did that surprise you?
Minutes into being inside the house.
Which house?
Michael's house.
Did you go to his house soon after arriving at Neverland?
Yes.
Did you see if Michael Jackson was there?
Yes. I saw him. He went straight to my kids.
And where did your kids go?
With him to his office.
All three of your kids?
Yes. And then I saw Davellin, and then she went back in. But they were in his office.
Did you speak with Mr. Jackson at the time that you arrived?
No.
Did you see the two Germans, Dieter and Ronald, immediately?
Yes.
What did you do when you saw them?
I knew now that Frank had been lying to me the whole entire time.
What did you do when you saw them?
I told them that I had an emergency and I have to go back home. Me and the kids have to go back home.
And who did you say that to?
I said it to Ronald and I said it to Dieter.
What did they say?
They said no, I couldn't. That the kids have to stay. If I have an emergency, I can go, but the kids had to stay. And that at this point is when they had pointed out to me that my outside phone calls are being monitored, that I'm being watched, listened to, and they can make my kids disappear.
Was this the first time?
And that anybody I told. And at this time I'm like, what am I going to tell? That we're walking across the grass? You know, what am I going to tell? And that anybody that I told, their life was going to be in danger.
Did you make a decision at that time as to whether you would leave?
Yes.
What was that decision?
Because that's the only way I could get out, because the other time it took a long process for me to leave. And this time, Jesus had told me he couldn't help me.
What was that decision that you made? To leave?
To leave.
To leave, all right. Did you speak to anybody else other than Ronald and Dieter about leaving?
Yeah, well, Jesus, I asked him for help. We went from the video place, tried to talk. I tried to talk secret with him in Spanish because I was talking to him in English, and that's when Dieter had walked up, and then I tried to talk to him in Spanish. And we went to the train station, and we went up to the, way up on the top, and I tried to talk to him, plead for him to help me, and he said he couldn't help me anymore, because when I had left, the whole house turned into chaos.
Did you ask him specifically to take you back to Los Angeles?
Yes, I did. Me and the kids.
He told you no? What did he tell you?
That he couldn't, that to ask Chris for help, because he doesn't know, and I found out that everybody was on a need-to-know basis. That not unless they stumbled upon the problem or they were pulled into it. Other than that, everybody was clueless.
Okay, alright. Did you go talk to Mr. Carter?
Well, what happened was, when I was going to look for him, but I didn't have to look for him, because I happened to see him, so, and that was Jesus's advice.
Did you know Chris Carter from a prior visit?
Yes, from when I was there. He's Michael's personal bodyguard.
Was he somebody who had been nice to you in the past?
Yes, he was.
Did you go up and ask him if you could leave?
Yes.
Did you ask him if your children could as well?
I did mention it to him, but that's when I seen the Germans again, so I completely, PSHU, played it off. It was just an emergency.
Did he say he would take you?
Yes, he did.
And did you leave?
Yes, I did.
Did you leave with your children still at Neverland?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because I did. Because of the reasons that I just told you.
Now, you mentioned earlier that in the drive back to Los Angeles, you used Mr. Carter's cell phone?
Over and over. And I used the phone inside your car.
Who were you calling?
Calling Jay over and over. And I was praying in the car. And.
Were you scared?
Yes.
What were you worried about?
That they were going to make true on everything that they had said.
Were you able to reach Jay on the telephone?
No.
Where did Mr. Carter take you?
To Jay's.
And did he drop you off there?
Yes.
Do you recall at approximately what time you arrived?
Oh, I don't know, but that telephone call is. You could see it on the subpoenaed phone record.
Whatever time that is would be the time that you were in the vehicle?
That's the time. That's the time.
Do you remember how many phone calls you made to Jay during that time?
A lot of them.
At one time during the course of this phone conversation or conversations that we just listened to, Frank mentions a trip, going someplace. Says you'll be dancing every night. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I do.
Did you have more than one conversation with Frank about going someplace?
Yeah, they wanted us to leave the country.
Did they tell you where they wanted you to go?
Well, this is in Neverland, when I found out that they were monitoring my phone calls inside Neverland. They had first mentioned Austria. And so I had mentioned it to Jay. I think it was Jay, over the phone. And then they came in hollering, because nobody was supposed to know. Then they found out that I knew Spanish and was a Spanish-speaking country, and the end result was Brazil, so I knew that they wanted me out of the country since then.
Alright, they were talking about going to Brazil?
Yes.
They'd actually begun that conversation prior to Jesus taking you out?
Prior to Jesus.
And during the phone calls that you had with Frank, did he mention that?
Yes.
Did he mention it more than once?
Yes.
Did he mention it often?
Yes.
Did he ever mention locations other than Brazil?
No, it ended up being Brazil.
Did he tell you why he wanted you to go to Brazil?
At first, everything evolved. At first, it was to keep me and my children safe from the killers. Then it just evolved into that, and one of the maximum points was until they had damage controlled everything for you.
No, you need to address us, okay?
I mean for Michael. And it escalated to that there was no definite time of return, until they fixed everything for you, for Michael.
Now, at some time after you came back to Jay's residence, at some point around that time, did you become aware of the fact that the Department of Child and Family Services wanted to talk with you?
Immediately.
Do you remember if that was before or after you went back to Neverland?
When Chris Carter brought me back, immediately like that. So then I said yes, I'm going to use this as an excuse to get my children out. That I need them for that. Oh, they went into high gear now. More.
Hold on. We'll get there. We'll get there, okay? Now, who was it who called you from the Department of Child and Family Services?
On the phone I spoke to 3 ladies at 3 different times, because I was trying to meet with the Child Protective Services by myself, in their office, because I believed what the Germans had said. So I figured, you know what? Maybe inside their office, it's going to be safe to express to them that my children are still there and they're not letting them out.
Did you ask somebody among them if you could interview with them at the office?
Yes, and they said no. They were not helpful.
Who is they?
Karen Walker, Laverne, and I don't know whether it's Jackie or Yvonne. She goes by 2.
There were 2 people that you had spoken with?
3.
All on the telephone?
Yes.
Same conversation or different conversations?
Different conversations, because I couldn't make them aware over the phone because I believed that my phone calls were being monitored, that they were over there.
Did you know why they wanted to meet with you?
No.
Did they tell you why?
No.
Did they tell you whether or not it had something to do with Michael Jackson?
No. They said that they would let me know in the meeting.
All right. Did.
They didn't let me know of any allegations till the meeting.
Did not discuss this video, the Living with Michael Jackson.
Nothing.
Were you aware, prior to your meeting with Child Protective Services or, as they call it, their Department of Child Family Services, whether or not that meeting had something to do with this documentary, Living with Michael Jackson?
Not until they had the actual meeting.
Okay. Now, did you tell anybody at Neverland about the fact that you'd been contacted by representatives of the Department of Child and Family Services?
Yes. I had called the administration office. I had called Jesus. Jesus did not return not a single phone call of mine. And the administration offices, their business offices did not return any of my phone calls. And then so there was contact made between Frank and me.
All right. Now, Frank then called you back?
Yes. I don't know whether he called. I can't remember this fact. But maybe by the phone records you can.
Okay.
I don't know whether they told him to call me or I called him. I don't know, but at that point I was completely desperate.
Did they, I mean the people from the Department of Child Family Services, DCFS, did they request of you to have your children present during that interview?
Yes.
Did they tell you that that was necessary?
Yes, that they have to see them themselves.
All right. Did you communicate that to Frank?
Yes.
Did you tell anybody else that you needed to have the children there?
No, that's all. My one conversation was now only with Frank.
All right. And tell me about the conversation that you had with Frank about this interview with DCFS?
I'm sorry, did you say?
Did you have a conversation in particular with Frank?
No, not, many.
Many, all right. Do you remember any of these conversations?
Yeah, my kids, because of this meeting.
What was Frank telling you during that time?
At first, it was no, unless I do the video. Then it evolved into more.
Well, what more? I mean, what specifically was he telling you about the video and the children?
Well, it evolved. Right before the video, it evolved into that if I did a good job, I wouldn't have to leave the country.
At some point in time did you agree to do a video?
Yes, I did.
Did somebody say to you that the video needed to be done before the interview?
Yes.
Who was that?
Frank.
What specifically did he tell you about that?
That I had to do it.
You had to do it before?
Yes.
All right. Now.
The meeting could not take place prior to the video. The video had to take place prior to the meeting.
Do you have a recollection at this time of the dates that these particular events?
Yes.
In other words, if I were to ask you specifically the date of the initial phone call from the Department of Child Family Services.
Oh, no, that I wouldn't be able to tell you. I need your help on the phone records.
Do you know the date?
But I know it was like that, immediately.
Immediately after you returned?
Yes, with Chris Carter.
Do you know the date that was scheduled for the interview?
Yes, that I do. The 20th.
And what day was that? The 20th?
The 20th.
And do you know what day of the week that is?
I think that was a Thursday. I think so. I think so. Thursday and the 20th go together in my mind.
If the court will once again take judicial notice that the 20th, I'm sorry. I gave you my calendar. I believe it is a Thursday, but could the court check and perhaps we could take notice of that?
Thursday is the 20th.
It is a Thursday, then.
May I just see it for a second?
He doubts you?
Thursday is the 20th. Thank you. So stipulated.
All right. Is this a good place to stop?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is it time to stop? Okay. We'll stop. See you tomorrow morning at 8:30. Remember the admonitions.